Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Health Detective podcast. I'm Susan Birch and I am absolutely delighted to be talking to Marty Kendall again today. Marty and I had a conversation, was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, I know. It was a while, too long. I really enjoyed it. And I went, I'd love to keep talking to Susan. She's so much fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it as well. And I love that our minds work in a similar way.
Yeah.
But you know what I really love about your work, Marty, is the science behind it, the analytical approach, the optimizing nutrition.
Yep.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
And when I first came across your work, what I really loved was that I've been on about kind of nutrient versus energy has been my thing for like most of my career. We're overfed, we're undernourished, we need to think about the nutrients, like stop worrying about the calories. I came across your work and I came across Ted Naiman and I felt like I was in seventh heaven.
Come home. Who knew nutrition could be about nutrients? What? That's crazy. How could you there's so many things we argue about.
Yeah. So delighted to have you here, and I want to talk about your book, which I think is really important, and I'll certainly be sending people towards that. So that's The Big Fat Keto Lies. But before we talk about that, let's talk about some of the new insights you've had since the last time we talked. And before I pushed record, we were talking about, getting the nutrients from plant foods or animal foods and what the difference is. So
we've been guiding people through the process, my career's masterclass for about 5 years, trying to get all the micronutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, the amino acids, essential fatty acids. I'm just trying to make that simpler and simpler. And I suppose one thing I started to look at, rather than just nutrients per calorie, nutrients per serving, because the nutrients per calorie foods, the foods that contain a lot of nutrients per calorie, spinach, watercress, asparagus, bok choy, those sorts of things, they're great foods if you want to add them to finesse your micronutrients, but you might only be able to eat 20 calories on average of those foods based on our 500,000 data entries from optimizers. And you're not going to get enough of the nutrients. That's what we kept finding. I've eaten as much spinach as I possibly can and I'm still not meeting my magnesium. What should I do? I sort of reversed it and started to look at nutrients per serving in the typical sizes that people eat the foods. And that's where basically meat and seafood come in to give you a ton of nutrients in the typical serving sizes. We eat them, and that can lay the foundation to get enough protein, to get enough energy. And then if you want to, you can go back and fill in the final gaps with those really hardcore high nutrient density per calorie foods. So I've been trying to make different charts and sort of build that into our programs to just help people first form that foundation of getting the nutrients from the food they eat every day. And then if they want to, they can really fine tune it. So that's been really fascinating and helpful. And also looking at, so much discussion and argument at the moment. Diet doctor have been talking about satiety per calorie. And it's been interesting to see different little sub communities pushing back on it. It's like the keto people hate it because olive oil and macadamia nuts aren't at number one, and then the plant-based people seem to hate it because it might lead people astray to maybe eat animal foods or seafood, and that would be bad. And there's all these different camps that somehow it doesn't gel with. They seem to think, oh yeah, it makes sense, but what if that'd be bad. So just diving back into all the data to see the different things that affect satiety and how much we eat. And it's sort of a combination of protein percentage, which is protein leverage, energy density, which is a valid thing that tends to be what the plant-based peeps tend to rely on, and then nutrient density as well as sort of an overlay. And they all sort of overlap and complement each other. So if you've got a diet that has plenty of nutrients, plenty of protein without excess energy, and it's not full of ultra-processed, dehydrated foods, think protein powder versus whole food protein sources, or raisins versus grapes, that sort of thing, you're going to have a really nice nutritional outcome. And it all sort of leads points in the same direction. And really, I love it because it describes why all the different, whether you're carnivore or plant-based or keto or low carb or following volumetrics, it brings it all together into one cohesive package that can work for anybody, and explain why any diet helps you to feel full, less hungry, and naturally not need to eat as much.
I really love your work. Can you, for people who aren't sure exactly what you're doing, because we kind of dive in, and if they haven't seen our first podcast where you described what optimizing nutrition was and how you're using real life people, real world data to analyze this, and you're an engineer and you're a data freak, and you're fantastic at this kind of thing.
Yeah, I just love data. I'm an engineer and one of those people that like graphs. A bit weird, and if I can see a graph, I believe it. Data is truth. Also married to Monica, who's type 1 diabetic, and been thinking about nutrition for the last 20 years since we tried to start having children. Now got 2 big, brimming, huge kids that eat a ton, and trying to work out how to feed them without going broke. And also I grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist home till I was 10, so that's sort of the mecca epicenter of nutrition dogma. And I suppose combined with my engineering background, I wanted to break through all the different dogmas. And as I started to get into low carb and keto, the keto craze was massive, and so many things that people were excited about ketones and excited they could eat fat again. But if you can take it to extremes, then you get into trouble. So yeah, we've got a community of optimizers, and we guide people through a macros and a micros masterclass where they track their food. And so we've now got 150,000 days of data from 3,500 people. And I've just kept diving into that data to see how different macronutrients and micronutrients affect how much we eat and satiety, and how much, rather than just getting the minimum amount of nutrients, what's the optimal that we can strive for, and how do we guide people to get to that point. And once they dial that in, they go, oh, I'm just, not hungry anymore. My cravings are satisfied. I'm not interested in food anymore because I'm so satiated at the cellular level almost. So yeah, it's fascinating. I just get addicted to seeing that process again and again with people getting the nutrients they need from food. And dropping, one lady said this morning she was taking $800 to $1,000 of supplements a month, and it's like, well, if you can get that from food, how much money can you invest in real whole food that you're going to love eating and enjoying? So yeah, that's my passion. I just keep on trying to solve the questions out there with the data I've got available.
And people can join your optimizing nutrition group.
Yeah, we've got a Marty Networks community, which is really amazing, and jump in and check out all our food lists and recipe books and recipes, and just the community is really amazing. I've just fallen in love with this community of people who are all positive and trying to help each other on the same journey, and that's really, really powerful. It's just really active and thriving, and love to have more people join.
So if anybody's interested in getting in there and inputting their nutrition data into and contributing to all the days of data you've got,
that'd be great.
That's a great opportunity.
More data is great. I love data.
Yeah. That's excellent. All right, well, let's start having a wee chat about Big Fat Keto Lies. So this is the book that you released in January, although I think it's been out for a little while.
Yeah, we put it out on Amazon in January just to finally get it out to the world, and get it on Kindle Unlimited for free, and get it in people's hands so they could check out the information. And I think it was about 18 months ago that I released the original PDF on the website. Yeah, it was just a response to all the different things that, if a little is better, good, more must be better sort of things. So in the keto movement, as an exciting, tumultuous time, and all of a sudden we could, low carb was good, lower carb must be better, and we could eat fat again. So as much fat as you could get was even better, and fat was a free food, and the higher your ketones were, the better. And so as I did it myself, and my family did it, and seeing other people online fasting for longer is better, and just not getting those results, and not getting the satiety and improved metabolic health and leanness, body composition that they all sort of hope for. So again, I just dove into the data and really approached the keto movement and the beliefs of the keto movement from a data-driven, nutrient-focused approach, just to show, maybe these are the shortcomings, and low carb is great, especially for people like my wife and son now who have type 1 diabetes, really important. But there's a limit, and once you go low carb, where to next, and how do you fine tune your diet to really get the results you want, rather than just unlimited MCT and butter and bulletproof coffee, and higher ketones the better. And so they're the things I try to flesh out and dive into why that might not be the way. And it's good to see lots of people have jumped on board, and even Ted Naiman and Diet Doctor are doing major shifts away from the ketogenic focused approach. Which, what does keto mean? It means so many things to so many different people these days, and not everybody needs the therapeutic ketosis for epilepsy and dementia and Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Most people just want to look and feel better and weigh a little bit less. So there's a different subtlety for different people who need different things under this keto banner, and just trying to flesh that out based on your context and goals.
And I think it's important that we distinguish between the therapeutic ketogenesis, and then sort of just, kind of keto for more, like you were saying, just general health. How are we going to feel better? And that we all respond individually. And I think I noticed probably a year, 18 months ago, I was really pleased to see the Diet Doctor starting to head more down that protein, the need of protein as a macronutrient, because that was something that, that's been big on my radar for a long time. And we were talking earlier, nutrients versus energy, or the nutrient relationship to the amount of energy you're eating, has been my focus for most of my career.
It's fundamental.
It is. And, we get really tied up in the calories, like everything's about how many calories does food have. And I think if we can separate it out into the nutrients and the energy, and I've always put protein in the nutrient compartment.
Yeah, definitely.
Not the energy compartment.
Yeah.
And so it's been really great seeing Diet Doctor and, some of these other places start to sort of head down those trends. And I'm sure that the information and the data that you're providing is actually helping to support.
Andreas is doing some awesome work, and he's become a really good friend. And about 2 years ago, I think Ted Naiman was harassing him to read my book, and finally read the book, and we had a chat, and we've been having weekly chats as he's been developing his new website and satiety per calorie model. And so it's been really fun to share that journey with Andreas, and he's doing some really good work, and just he does a really good job of making everything simple and easy to pick up. I want to dive into every bit nuance and flesh it out and explain it for the engineer, for the nutrition nerd, but Andreas does a really amazing job of just making it super simple for people to pick up and run with. So
Oh, it's good. Well, thanks for your background work and helping.
No, it's good to see it being picked up and used.
And then Ted Naiman, when so for anyone, I do have an interview with Ted Naiman. I think you've got some on your podcast as well. And Ted Naiman's book is beautiful. I recommend it to everyone. Those illustrations are just outstanding. And Ted's talking about the same thing we are. What does he call it?
Protein to energy.
Protein to energy.
Yeah, but he's trying to progress it to the satiety per calorie model, because protein alone, there's other factors, the fiber, the energy density, the nutrients, and the hyperpalatability that comes when we combine sugar, starch, and added refined fat to make ultra processed foods is where we really get into trouble. So you can sort of consider all of those factors and bring it into one model that's then applicable to any dietary approach, whether it's carnivore or plant-based, or most people just need to stop buying those foods in the center aisles of the supermarket that have got the same ingredient profile as an Oreo cookie, which is sugar, starch, and seed oils mixed together with flavors, colorings, and a few vitamin supplements to make the label look better. It's, everything is becoming that in our food system because it's so hyper palatable and hyper profitable.
Yeah, and cheap, not
Yeah.
cheap, but cheaper
Yeah.
than buying real food.
Yeah.
And not as time consuming as buying and cooking and
Yep.
making real food. And I put my hands up. I'm sure I'm a sugar addict. I have cookie out of my grandson's cookie packet, and I want to eat the whole packet.
Yeah, but
craving.
People call those the bad carbs, but really the bad carbs are the combination of fat and carbs together. From the satiety analysis, we see that people eat the maximum when they consume about 43% non-fiber carbohydrate, with the rest from fat. So that's the perfect formula for cookies and croissants and donuts and pizza. That they design these foods to have this amazing macronutrient profile that fills our glucose fuel tank and our fat fuel tank at the same time. So we get a double dopamine response and we feel addicted to them. So it's not necessarily the carbs are bad, but it's the carbs and fat together that just, we all love to eat. And it's no surprise that the Australian and the US and probably everywhere else macronutrient profile has gravitated to that perfect combination that leads us to eat the most.
And, when we look at foods, and you're a good person to talk to about this, because in nature, where do we find foods? We find protein and carbs, or protein and fat. We don't find carbs and fat together very often, do we?
Yeah, totally. It's the milk, it's the nuts. They're the only things that have really got that combination of carbs and fat together. But Sian Foley talks about the autumnal nutritional profile of these foods that are really available in a short period of time to enable us to grow to prepare for winter. And, you could say winter is low carb keto, spring is protein spring modified fast, summer is high carb, low fat, and then we're back in autumn fattening up with these carb and fat foods. But yeah, like you said, today they're all around us all the time, and you might have got saturated fat in meat and monounsaturated fat and omega-6 fat in nuts, and then starch in grains and sugar from fruit. They're the main energy sources from all those different foods. But today we just take the refined versions of all those energy sources, dump them together, add flavorings and colorings, and call it food and make a great profit off it. And that's where we get into trouble. And it's got no nutrients, no protein, no fiber that our bodies crave to make us satiated.
Mm-hmm. And then, how do we change our relationship to eating those foods? And that's the $60 million question, really. That's the one that everybody struggles with.
Yeah, and you mentioned calories before, and energy balance is definitely a thing, and you can try to eat less food, but usually our willpower fails when we pit it against our survival instincts. But I think rather than trying to avoid the bad foods, you need to start by prioritizing the nutrients you need from food, the protein, the minerals, the vitamins. Once you get those from the food you're eating, those siren foods that we can't stop eating become much more resistible. They don't have the same siren call. If you're starving yourself, the donut's always going to look amazing, and once you start, you're going to eat the whole lot. But if you're getting the nutrients you need from food, it's going to be much easier to resist those, and you'll be much less interested in those foods.
Yeah, I found, it used to fascinate me. My daughter, when she was at college, used to work at a cafe, and I'd go in and just sort of wait for her after work. And a number of mostly women, I don't know if there's a gender sort of specific to this, but mostly women would come in 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would sort of announce quite sort of generally, oh, I haven't had anything to eat all day, order their drink, and then buy something that was, full of this sugar and fat together. And it was
The
sort of
muffin, the
almost,
croissant.
or something. Yeah. And then it's almost like that was a justification. Okay, I haven't eaten, now I can eat this. And then, the nutrient side of me is sitting there like,
No. Yeah, and the problem with that approach is it just puts your blood sugar on this roller coaster. So we always find that if people break their fast in the morning, that first meal is protein focused. They've got all the protein they need from an overnight fast. Their blood sugars are stable and they can go a whole lot longer. And the blood sugars often actually drop, but they're not hungry. So they've got amazing blood sugars rather than starting it with this fat carb bomb that raises your blood sugars, and not just raises them a bit, but it keeps them elevated for a very, very long time. So with my wife and my son, whenever they encounter those, pizza, pasta, fat carb combo foods, the closed loop insulin pump systems that is pumping out insulin for hours and hours and even days, if it was a Easter or Christmas sort of occasion, to try and hold back your stored energy while you're using up all that energy from the food you ate. But a solid protein meal will respond really nicely with blood sugars and insulin. So yeah, definitely get the protein, get the nutrients, but try not to get too much fat or carbs, especially together.
And I'm jumping in the middle of your book here, but this is probably a great time to talk about how, insulin does hold back our energy stores. So do you want to talk about that? How we can't release fat while we've got all this insulin circulating?
Yeah, I've got a bit of an interesting front row seat with my wife and my son now being type 1 diabetic to understand how insulin works. And I used to sort of think from the keto days that it was like eat carbs, body releases insulin, get fat, all that fat is stored. So therefore, if you didn't eat carbs, you'd turn off your insulin. But after watching the basal insulin on my wife and son's pump, you realize that for someone on a low carb diet, especially, about 70 to 80% of the insulin is basal insulin. So it's the insulin you need from your pancreas, whether you're eating or not, just to hold your body together from disintegrating. So whether you're type 1 or not, that's the same thing. So a lot of us focus on the insulin response to food, and carbs will raise your insulin more quickly. Protein has a slower response. Fat has a lower but longer response. But really the biggest requirement for insulin for your body is your basal insulin. So if you're bigger, you've got more energy to hold in storage, therefore you need more insulin. So the best way to attack your insulin requirement is to be leaner, to find a way of eating less over the long term that provides greater satiety. And it just comes back again like a broken record to get the protein, nutrients without excess energy, and you'll be satiated and be able to reduce your body fat, which will in turn reduce your insulin, your waking glucose, and your waste, and everything else that we want to manage.
And so what you're talking about there really is your energy is either carbs or it's fat. So we get our protein, and then we can choose if we want to eat more vegetables and fruits, or we can eat, or we can choose if we want to go down more of a fat-fueled process.
Yeah, if you're getting a higher protein percentage, it doesn't really matter if you balance of fat and carbs. But if you can eat fat or carbs sort of one at a time is ideal rather than both together, because you can think, well, you fill your glucose fuel tank, it gets full to the brim, your glycogen in your liver and muscles is replenished, and your body says, okay, I'm cool now, I'm satiated, I don't need more food. And you can think it from a lipostatic approach to satiety and hunger, where you've filled the fat in your body, and your body says, okay, I've got enough fat energy, that's cool. But if consuming fat and carbs together, you're filling both fuel tanks at the same time. So you need more of the carbs and the fat to reach satiety. So you sort of think of it as a hybrid fuel car where you're filling both fuel tanks at the same time with these amazing hyperpalatable foods that we can't stop eating.
And then we have that prioritization of how we use the energy, which is kind of what you're alluding to there a little bit as well.
Yeah, you've got the oxidative priority. So if you've got a ton of glucose in your body, you're going to burn off the glucose primarily first before you get to the fat. So the fat just gets stored.
Oh, I had a question and it just popped right out of my
Dumbfounded.
I get when I do that. It's like, oops, my Alzheimer's is kicking in. What it was about, what was that question going to be about? Oh, well, I'll come up with another one and I'll come back to it. I think one of the things with the ketogenic diet and ketosis for me is that I think of ketosis as being a metabolic state rather than a diet. And I think that's one of the things that's always sort of slightly concerned me with the keto diet is that we're ignoring that ketosis is a metabolic state that we can actually achieve in quite a few different ways.
Yeah,
really.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, we all thought high ketones was better, and Jimmy Moore was showing off all these high ketone levels, and everybody else followed suit. And if you fasted for longer or drank 5 bulletproof coffees in the morning, you could get your ketones higher. But what you're doing is you just, you've got glucose, fat, ketones in your blood, and you really don't want to have too much energy from any fuel source floating around your blood. So driving super high ketones is not super smart. And you see a lot of people who have got more muscle mass, are healthier, they're able to clear the ketones more effectively and more efficiently. The same mechanism that clears lactate, the monocarboxylate transporters, which is a bit of a mouthful, also clears your ketones. So if you've got a really healthy metabolism, healthy mitochondria, you might see lower end ketones, although you're eating a ketogenic diet. So yeah, that's I think one of the big pitfalls that we went through is chasing a certain number on your ketone meter, and you're doing the diet right if you had higher ketones. But really, from a diabetes point of view, you want lower fuel in your blood, whether you're type 1, type 2, or non-diabetic. And having lower glucose is really the most useful marker that we can manage. And people with lower glucose also tend to have lower end ketones. If they're fasting for days at a time, glucose might be really low and ketones might be higher. But if you're eating fairly regularly, then having lower glucose and low-ish ketones seems to be a really, really healthy place to be.
Yeah, so basically the message is if you are measuring your ketones, don't get distressed if they... Yeah,
don't chase it with more MCT or butter or exogenous ketones.
Yeah, and although it's not really a calories in, calories out system, there is an element of calories in, calories out that we do need to take care of and think about.
Yeah. I mean, energy balance is definitely a thing. Our body doesn't destroy or create energy, but both sides of the calories in, calories out equation are incredibly complex and beyond our ability to measure them accurately. So if you dial in your protein and minerals and vitamins, you're going to be getting what you need from food, so that the energy balance is going to be a whole lot easier for your body to work out and manage, rather than trying to track every calorie of your donuts and croissants and MCT oil and butter on chronometer, which you're always going to lose that battle.
So in your book you talk about well, I guess it'll come back to the conversation we're having now a little bit, but why high-fat keto works in the beginning and then it stops working.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely not fearing fat in the early days is a really good thing if you're trying to transition to a lower carb diet, because we see moving from that 45% carbs to 10 to 20% carbs, we naturally consume 27% less energy. So we get this satiety effect from moving away from the donuts and croissant to less processed foods that contain protein and not that fat carb combo. But if then you go, oh yeah, fat's a free food, I can eat the fat bombs and everything else that we create. Every time we create a new diet, we create comfort foods to go with it. Paleo was thriving until all the paleo comfort food books started popping up, and everybody went, this doesn't work anymore because I'm eating paleo. But the almond meal with the butter and the coconut oil together in these amazing hyperpalatable snacks that just throw them off. So the same thing happened with keto, where everybody's creating the fat bombs and all these amazing ketogenic snacks that just combine a whole lot of energy together and with flavors that we just make us love to eat them. So yeah, doubling down on the fat at that point is not a great idea. So if you get to a point where low carb stalls, then it's time to look at, am I overdoing the added fat? And you can dial back the added oils and dressings and butter, and then look for leaner cuts of meat, but do that progressively rather than overnight, because you need some energy from fat or carbs. And if you get enough protein, you'll probably be getting most of your energy from fat. So rather than 80% fat, you might dial it back to 70%, 60, 50, 40. 40 is pretty hardcore, and you probably don't even need to get to that point.
So what protein ratio? I find it really hard to talk in numbers, because I prefer to help people work out protein intakes for themselves based on how they're feeling, where their health is, what their blood chemistry tells me, what their age is, how they're digesting.
Yeah, protein. How much protein do you measure it in percentage or grams per kilo lean body mass or grams per ideal body weight? It can get pretty confusing pretty quickly, but what we do in the macros masterclass is just say, hey, let's track for a couple of days. How much protein are you currently eating? It's likely pretty close to what you actually need, because your body does a good job of regulating it to match your lean muscle mass. And then maybe start dialing back the added carbs and fat so you can reduce your overall energy while prioritizing protein. So that has a tendency to drive the protein percentage up, which aligns with greater satiety. So really start with where you're at. I mean, your bodybuilder might be at 3 grams per kilo lean body mass, which is a massive amount of protein, but But interestingly, it's the older females that tend to thrive on that 40-50% protein, because they're eating so few calories. They need to get the protein they need without too much extra energy. So when they really dial the protein percentage up, it works really well. But if you're on the average 15%, then nudging up to 20% by dialing back carbs and fat a little bit while prioritizing protein might get you a long way. And then going from 20 to 25 and 25 to 30 and 40% tends to be a nice upper limit. If you try to go to 50, 60%, you're eating protein powders and egg whites and plain dry chicken breast, and most people don't enjoy eating like that. Eventually the body says, hey, I need some energy, so you'll find yourself in a rebound binge before too long.
Well, I'm definitely one of those older women who find that I do better as just really focusing on my protein content first, and I try and get my protein from good animal-based sources, and eggs and fish and seafood and a variety of meats, and I don't worry about the fat that comes in with those proteins at all. And then just depending on my energy levels will depend on and how what I'm doing, if I've got a big day out on the river paddling, or or whether I'm doing some heavy workouts in the gym, well then then my energy will be based around that. But I do prioritize my protein first, and
Yeah,
definitely
great plan.
eating more. Yeah, definitely eating probably a higher percentage now that I'm getting, because it's quite hard to, before it used to be about trying to build muscle. Now it's about trying to maintain what
Oh
I've
yeah,
got.
and it becomes really, really important when we get older. I mean, men from 20, 30, 40 start to lose their lean muscle mass, and you have to work to keep it on. That's sort of my game at the moment, to build as much as I can. So as I get older, I get to maintain that. But women sort of fall off a precipice through through that time of their life with menopause, where the estrogen drops, and all of a sudden they struggle to hold on to the protein in their body. So their appetite increases to get more protein. And if they just keep eating the same way, they're going to eat more food to get the protein. So it's the protein leverage effect. So at that point, you have to really nudge up your protein percentage and dial back your energy from fat or carbs. So you can get the protein you actually need to support your lean muscle mass without overeating. Becomes really critical at that point.
And when you're talking about the protein leverage effect, you're talking about our body's innate desire to have protein. And that's what you've been alluding to, is that we keep eating and eating to try and make sure that we get enough protein in.
Yeah. Professors Robbenheimer and Simpson in 2003, looking at grasshoppers, identified that they keep on eating to get the protein they need. So today, in our hyperpalatable food environment, where the protein has been diluted by added grain sugars and industrial seed oils, we need to keep eating more to get the same amount of protein. So we end up eating too much energy, more energy than we need to get that protein. And there seems to be a similar sort of effect for minerals and maybe vitamins, but then, as I was mentioning before, the energy density also seems to be a factor as well. So people eating a plant-based vegan diet probably aren't eating a lot of protein, but those foods are hard to overeat as long as they're not adding a ton of oil. So there seems to be an energy density effect, as well as protein leverage and nutrient density also working together.
Although when you look at attempts to get sufficient protein from a vegan diet, I mean, your calorie intake ends up going up considerably.
Yeah, totally.
In order to meet those protein needs.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the highest protein percentage foods, you might have watercress and spinach, might be 50 or 60%, but how much do you need to eat of those foods to get it? You're looking at peanuts or natto or those sorts of things. Beans, we have to eat a lot of
tofu, quinoa,
a lot of that food, a lot of calories to get the same amount of protein as if you're eating eggs or cod or seafood or beef. You can just really easily get those, meet your protein requirements. And it's no wonder that people thrive on a carnivore diet, because they're just getting enough bioavailable protein from a diet that they weren't before.
So people who are scared of protein, all these stories out there, all the protein myths.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. What are your thoughts?
Well, I just don't think we've got any studies yet to show that, protein is harmful to our health. All the research is epidemiological. We don't have anything to show that it's good for our health. Well, I mean, that's not true. We do have some studies, but in both ways, we have to be honest about what the research is actually showing. I know that I definitely need adequate protein personally, and I suppose different people, different metabolisms, different body types can possibly thrive on different amounts.
Yeah. If you've got, the protein and energy amount is really dependent on how much lean muscle you've got. So if you've got a lot of lean muscle, you'll need more protein to maintain that lean muscle without losing it and building and repairing it. And that's where, the absolute amounts of protein can be, you might see someone who's following a vegetarian diet not getting as much protein and thriving okay, and that's perfectly fine. But wherever you're at, whatever dietary type you're dialing up that protein percentage by pulling back the fat and carbs tends to lead to greater satiety and fat loss. And I think steroid and insulin taking bodybuilders who are trying to pound 500 grams of protein and 10,000 calories a day, that's not healthy, because you're just going to overdrive your metabolism, and those guys die early. But I think the biggest thing for aging well is being resilient and not being prone to infection, because you're so frail. Or if you fall over and break your wrist, break your hip, you're not going to end up in hospital and get pneumonia. And what is it, 50% of people who break their hip die within a year of some complication of what they got in hospital. It's just horrific. So being strong and resilient is important. So it's not about having a maximum amount of muscle mass, but it's about being strong, fit, healthy, and resilient as you age.
I think that's good advice. I see, people are concerned about kidney function and cancer and things like that. But in my practical experience, kidney function improves often with more protein.
Yeah, it's like resistance training for your kidneys. You just build bigger, stronger, more effective, more efficient kidneys. And you might go to your doctor and the EGFR, estimated glucomerular filtration rate, might be higher, but that's estimated based on the creatinine that you're in your urine. And if you're got more muscle mass and eating more protein than the average sarcopenic 60-year-old on average that's going to get blood tests, you're going to look like you're in trouble. But when you actually do the further testing, those people always tend to be doing great. So you can't look at someone who's walks in and is shredded and healthy and strong and go, "What up? Your kidney function is dying." It's like, that doesn't make sense. Let's do some more testing, because it's a bit of a flawed test. And if you've got a nephrologist and you're on stage 5 renal dialysis, then talk to your nephrologist about how much protein you should have. But if you don't know what a nephrologist is, or you're not you don't have one, then you probably don't need to worry about eating too much protein. Most people don't naturally eat too much protein. It's the last thing they want to eat, and once they get enough, their appetite just shuts down, and that's sort of the magic.
All right. Well, time restricted eating, fasting. This has been a bit of a hot topic for me lately, and I've been taking a bit of a deep dive, because I get, it's just like the keto diet. It's just like all these things that come out. There might be a little bit of research, there's some information, and suddenly all these entrepreneurs are out there writing books, running programs, and I just get concerned that we're extrapolating information from fireflies and rodents into human physiology, and we're trying to live these lives and
totally. We've got these studies in fasting in C. elegans worms, where you starve a worm and it lasts a bit longer, and you get autophagy in rodents when they don't eat for 7 days. But then you realize that 1 rodent day is 40 human days. So to get the same effect of fasting for 7 days in a rodent, you go 7 times 40 is 280 days. That's how long I need to fast to get autophagy. Am I that committed to getting those Irish hunger strike guys died at about 30 days when they were lean. I'm not sure about I need autophagy that badly. But what we do know is that being lean, robust, healthy is a good thing to be. So eating in a way that guides people to attain a better, healthier, leaner body composition, to be resilient, to be strong, to not be over fat, to not have high blood sugars, to not have high insulin is going to be much better for all of those things we're aiming for: cancer, diabetes, heart disease, metabolic health. Most of it just comes back to energy toxicity, and if you look healthier, you are healthier for the most part. So people definitely overdo the fasting, and that's where, coming from a diabetes background, watching CGMs all day, and living with the simple glucometer, realized that people could use the glucometer as a fuel gauge to guide when and what to eat. So we kicked off data-driven fasting, and that's sort of taken over my life. So that was sort of a bit of a hack to stop people fasting for too long and thinking that more fasting is better, because every time I tried to fast for days at a time, what do you eat when you haven't eaten for 3 days? You're face down in the peanut butter and the yogurt, which is technically healthy, but it's this energy dense food that's going to replenish all your energy immediately with minimal protein and nutrients at the same time. So if you've fasted for so long that you can't stop yourself eating and you're making poorer food choices, maybe you've gone a little bit too long. So that's where the glucose meter can be really handy, just to say, is my glucose lower than my normal glucose? Yes, my hunger's real. Yes, it's time to eat. No, I don't need to wait any longer. If your glucose is well below normal for you, you can go, maybe a bit of carbs might bump my glucose back up quickly, so I'm not as hungry. If you're hungry and your glucose is above your normal trigger point, then prioritize protein and nutrients, because you know you've got heaps of fuel in your bloodstream. So it's just a really, really powerful way of guiding when and what to eat without having to track all your food all the time.
And how do people find their baseline glucose? They're using their glucometer.
Yeah, just a normal glucometer from the chemist. You don't need a CGM. They can actually be not just expensive, but a little bit overwhelming and inaccurate. So a normal glucometer, we've got a data-driven fasting app that they can log into and put on their phone, and just log the pre-meal glucose before you eat over 3 days. And the app takes the average of that, and that's your initial trigger. And then as you go along, if you do better and better, then your trigger starts to drop just slowly to push you a little bit harder, a little bit further, to help you to continue to make progress as your metabolism improves.
And so the app will automatically adjust for that.
Does the automatic updates based on the last week of average glucose.
And that's a fasting glucose every morning?
No, it's the pre-meal glucose, because, you know,
the pre-meal glucose.
Fasting and post-meal glucose are all dependent, you know, that they all follow the pre-meal glucose. If you can wait a little bit longer, your glucose is just a little bit lower, your fuel gauge is a little bit showing empty, it's definitely time to eat. And if you're just a little bit more empty each time, you're depleting your fat stores, and you're improving your metabolic health.
Sounds like a really gentle way of starting to get a bit more tolerance for lower glucose, knowing that you're not going into hypoglycemia.
Definitely very gentle, and that's the key. We guide people. It's like progressive overload in the gym. If you go into the gym, you don't want to lift the 300 kilo deadlift day one. You can just get the bar and, you know, lift the bar only, and put a little bit more weight on the bar, and put a little bit more weight on the bar next time once you've recovered. But after 4 weeks of chasing a trigger consistently, it can get quite challenging. Then we take a break and people can come back and do it again. So we've had people we've done 22 different challenges, and had some people doing most of those, and they just keep on coming back and fine tuning and making great progress over the long term.
That's really great. Do you see any sort of consistent glucose levels? Like, is there anything the data is showing you about just averages for population?
Well, the average pre-meal is about 86 milligrams per deciliter, which is 4.6 millimole. People with insulin resistance will start on the upper end, maybe 150 or much higher. And as they chase a lower pre-meal trigger, they'll get lower and lower and lower. And eventually, you know, some people go, does the app have a limit? And no, the data-driven fasting app doesn't have a lower limit for glucose. But as you get down to those lower levels, you'll be at your ideal body composition, and then it's time to stop and transition to maintenance. You can also use your glucose as a guide through maintenance as well, not just chasing a lower glucose, but to learn to maintain your weight. And if you're gaining weight, the trigger will drop, and so it'll just guide you to maintain and get into the habit of practicing maintenance, which can often be harder than the weight loss phase itself.
Yeah, and I think that's where people do get tripped up, you know, and that can take a while to kind of the weight gain to sort of catch up with you again. Then you suddenly realize, oh, I put all this weight back on inadvertently.
Yeah. You're just resetting your dopamine levels. I mean, those carb fat combo foods, interesting studies from Dana Small come out recently. Another great one that just shows as we eat those foods, our dopamine set point rises and rises, and we need more stimulation. So it's the reverse thing with going down, and then you need to sort of get to a new dopamine set point where you're not expecting your food to be entertaining, but once you get used to that, you'll enjoy your food just as much.
And is there a lower level that you find the average? I mean, I think you talk about type 1 diabetics, you sort of don't go below 4 maybe.
Yeah, I mean 3.84 for a type 1 diabetic is sort of the lower end, but if your blood sugars are more stable, you don't feel those to be low. So just like if you're in keto or low carb, your blood sugars aren't coming from what you want to avoid is the reactive hypoglycemia where you're eating a cookie or a croissant or a donut or a pizza, and then your blood sugars come crashing down later, and it's that rapid fall with a ton of insulin that make you want to eat immediately and make poorer food choices. So we guide people to dial back their carbs till they get a rise of less than 1.6 millimole or 30 milligrams per deciliter after they eat, and then forget the post meal and just focus on the pre-meal because they've got their carbs under control.
Well, I think for anyone who's considering fasting, I think this is a really great place to start, Marty. And I'll make sure that, I think in our last podcast we had all those links, but I'll make sure that they all go into the show notes again, because this is a really good place for people to start getting an understanding. Because I get quite concerned, I haven't heard so much about 5-2 fasting recently. I don't know whether I'm just not listening, but I get concerned that we know that calorie restriction has some longevity benefits. There seems to be pretty good evidence about that. But again, I get really concerned about the nutrient quality, because you can eat whatever you like for 5 days and then you don't eat for 2 days. And then you've restricted calories, but what about the quality of the food that you're eating? And, you're talking about needing to eat protein as you come out of that fast. And so those things do kind of worry me. And then for women, I don't know, but I just wonder whether, our fasting cycle, depending on our estrogen and progesterone levels and what's happening with testosterone through our monthly cycles. And then again, for older woman like myself, do I want to be chewing through my protein stores,
lean muscle mass,
to chase, some benefits that may be there from fasting?
They may exist, they may not.
I don't know.
Or it seems to be the menopausal female that tends to get very excited about weight loss and then fasting, and think that if they don't eat for longer, they're going to get these magical benefits, and they've been told that they don't lose any protein, so protein doesn't matter, so they can refeed on high fat keto. And that's just a diabolical slippery slide for loss of lean muscle mass, because you're not getting enough nutrients, not getting enough protein when you do eat, so you're quickly losing lean muscle mass, and it's very, very hard to build it back as you age. And just thinking about all the GLP-1 antagonists, same sort of thing. If you were eating 4 muffins a day and now you're taking $16,000 worth of injectable satiety, then you can eat 2 muffins a day. But what happens when your insurance can't pay for that anymore in 6 months, and you're nutrient deficient, you lost all this lean muscle mass, and your appetite comes back with like a raging monster? It's just going to be a recipe for disaster and a whole lot of sadness as you gain all your weight back.
Oh, and then your health is really diminished considerably. And I've worked with a lot of women who have had gastric bypass surgery, and I'm very compassionate. I understand the need. I understand the excitement when you start to lose that weight. But boy, over time, I just see absolute loss of nutrients. And, you know, when they do eat, they're like, okay, well, I can have one chippy, you know, and I'm just like, yeah, but where's your protein?
Yeah, from what I've seen, it makes it harder to eat the meat, seafood, and fibrous veg because you can't fit it in your stomach. So what do? You eat the chippy, you blend up the Kentucky Fried Chicken and throw it down the hatch because you're craving the calories and you need the most energy dense food, which tends to be the most nutrient poor, low satiety. You know, it's sad.
And you know, you got to weigh up the health risks of, you know, like, you know, severe obesity. But as a kind of cosmetic way of trying to solve a problem, I don't know. All I have seen, I think I know one person, I've had one client who I think has done really well, maintained the weight loss, seems to be very healthy, and takes a lot of supplements though.
Right.
But just about in fact, everybody else has deteriorated, and then the weight comes back on again. You know, so post 5 or 6 years, and anyway.
Yeah. Not exactly an easy fix, and makes tracking your food and dialing in the harder to find nutrients look easy and less hassle.
And so what are your thoughts about things like, you know, 72-hour fasts and then 10-day fasts? And
yeah, I mean, once in a while it's not going to be diabolical, but if you're doing it all the time, then there's nothing magical about fasting that negates your need for nutrition. You still need protein and nutrients across the long term. So if you're doing a 72-hour fast or alternate day fasting or whatever, it just makes it incredibly hard. Even with OMAD, most people can't get the protein and nutrients they need in that one meal a day. And what are you going to eat when you're only eating once a day? You're incredibly hungry. And you've been told you can eat anything if you're fasting. So you just end up making poorer food choices, and your diet quality goes down the toilet.
And then I think because we have such a weight loss focus on all of this, everything is about weight, you know, in our society, and we're all probably guilty of it, you know, myself included. When we get to things like, you know, one meal a day, like you're saying, we're just not getting those nutrients in, and then our health quality just, you know, our health span decreases considerably.
You need not just the protein, but all the vitamins and minerals to power up your mitochondria that enable them to use the energy from fat and carbs in your diet. So if you've got no nutrients from the food you're eating, you're not going to feel energized, and you're going to be using less and less energy. So you have to fast harder and fast longer as your metabolic rate decreases more and more as you lose more and more muscle mass, and you just back yourself into a corner that eventually your survival instincts are going to come out raging and undo all your extremely hard, diligent work, which is sort of a sad point. So yeah, just nourishing your body, whatever your eating pattern is definitely ideal.
And then a well-fed body, a well-nourished body, is a healthier body that can lose weight and maintain weight easier and not be so susceptible to those big fluctuations. You know?
Yeah, an active body that's effectively burning the energy. You've got more lean muscle mass, so you're going to be using more energy. You're going to have more strength, more vitality. You're going to be warmer, hotter. You're not going to be feeling like you're wasting away and freezing cold and depressed in a corner, not wanting to move because you've backed yourself into a corner.
And you touched on, you know, a really good point about losing that muscle, and that, you know, people are told if they fast, they're not going to lose muscle because apparently the autophagy, you know, eating our cells is going to refeed them the proteins we need. I don't know that I've seen evidence.
Yeah, the amount of protein you use from your body does decrease somewhat, but you still use a significant amount, especially in those first few days. And if you fast for 2 days every time, you're not actually tapping into that magical point where you use a little bit less protein from your body. But you're going to be using protein from your body to make glucose if you're not eating.
And then, so in what order do we lose weight? So when we're restricting calories or fasting or however we're losing weight, what order do we lose weight in?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I like that one. Just thinking in terms of oxidative priority, you're going to be using the glucose first. So if you've got liver and muscles full of glycogen, you're going to be drawing down on that first, so you see your glucose go down. And really only then can you tap into your body fat. But if you're trying to lose too much body fat, there's a Alpert equation from, I think, 1990. A guy did a study where he basically showed that people who are a lot fatter, carrying more body fat, can draw down on that more energy from their stored energy. But if, as you get leaner, there's less and less energy you can draw down on, which makes a lot of sense. So it basically says that people who are getting towards their ideal body weight definitely shouldn't fast because they're going to be losing the lean muscle mass. They need to be in a more moderate energy deficit to keep dialing things in while getting enough protein. So those people who have got a lot of weight to lose might be able to fast for days, and it might be quite easy because they're just releasing all this stored energy quite easily. But eventually that taps out and you're going to need to be less aggressive and focus on food quality. So focusing on food quality from the start, probably a good habit to get into.
I guess that's where Jason Fung and, Fung's work comes into play, because, he's working with an obese population, and those people are all under medical management. But then we go, oh, look what happened to them. Oh, if we do that, me at my 58 kgs, I'm going to do that. Well, what the hell's going to happen to me?
Yeah, you're going to lose all your lean muscle mass, especially at your age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and not every person following fasting and has seen a Jason Fung video is under medical management and got a BMI of 50. There's a lot of people in probably exactly your situation who are older postmenopausal females who just want to dial in that last bit of body fat to be happy with themselves. And that's what we largely see. I would have expected to see more people with type 2 diabetes, but often our population is just the postmenopausal female who's put on a little bit more weight than they want, and they want to dial in their blood sugars and metabolic health just a little bit. And their blood sugars are already quite healthy, but by chasing a lower pre-meal blood sugar, they tend to improve.
And do you see good results for them? Because that's, that postmenopausal woman, and we're always blaming our estrogen,
Hormones.
And our hormones. And I know that they have an impact, but I do wonder again about nutrient. Like, we need to get back to nutrient density first to fix our hormones. And that's where a bit of fat's quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean, fat is the precursor to testosterone and estrogen and all your hormones. So, especially cholesterol, that's the one thing that blew me out of the water with all my satiety analysis is that foods with more cholesterol align with eating less statistically. Like monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fat just adds calories, but foods with more cholesterol seem to have I don't know if we have a specific craving for cholesterol. It's just a weird element of the data that really knocked me out of the water. But don't avoid cholesterol, especially from nutrient dense foods like liver and eggs and the like. But that postmenopausal female definitely thrives, especially when they dial up their protein percentage. The young lean male athlete might be burning 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day because they're really active, got a lot of muscle mass, so their protein percentage might be down at 20% because they're getting heaps of protein from their 3,000 calories a day. But if you're only burning 1,000 calories a day, you need to have a much higher protein percentage. So, and it's it's the people, the ladies that treat it as a game and say, how do I solve this puzzle of nutrition? I need more calcium, I need more iron, I need more, omega-3. What foods contain those, and what am I going to add to my shopping list this week? And then repeat the process next weekend, repeat the process next weekend. It's just this gamified, progressive approach to nutrition to fill in those nutrient gaps. And then they go, oh, I feel so energetic and I've got all this energy. And Lady Linda, who just we just finished a micros masterclass, parents, I think her mum died of type 2 diabetes complications, so she's got the motivation and she's got the process, and she's an accountant and just loves to dial it in. And yeah, 4 weeks later, she's feeling great and lost a bunch of weight and feeling energetic, which is even more exciting than the weight loss.
Oh, well, I think you do beautiful work, and
it's fun.
I encourage anyone to go and check it out and have a look. And if you think that it might help you, especially all those women my age who are wanting to get rid of those last couple, get rid of a few kilos of body fat that have snuck on over the last few years.
Healthy aging is really important to feel vital and independent and have mental function when you're aging, and be independent. I'm just trying to start a rumor that nutrition might be about nutrients. So that's sort of my goal. Seems crazy, I know, but trying to bring it back to the nutrients in your food. Nutrition is about everything else.
You and me and Ted will be like, Chinese whispers.
Everybody wants to argue about saturated fat or polyunsaturated fat, or minimizing of PUFAs to extremely low levels, or protein's going to kill you or give you cancer. It's just, let's just get the nutrients we need from the food, and then you don't need to argue about everything else. Everything else falls into place.
Exactly. Oh, this has been amazing. Have you got any? I didn't get very far through all your keto lies, but it's just amazing to talk to you anyway. And
thank you.
We'll put a link to your book out there for those people to have a look.
Yeah, it's just free on Amazon Kindle Unlimited. If you got Kindle Unlimited, it'll be free. So we just wanted to get it out there for people to check out. I think it's $3 if you're not on Kindle Unlimited. So in fact, keto lies, you can check out data-driven fasting, optimizing nutrition. Just Google and you'll find me.
Well, I just wondered if there was any one of those. I think, did you have 12 keto lies? Was there any one of those lies that you thought was the biggest, most important lie?
What's my favorite keto lie? I think keto lie number 6, food quality is not important. It's all about insulin, avoiding carbs. I think that chapter just, for me, put it all together, that we're all focused about minimizing insulin and avoiding carbs or avoiding fat or this, that, or the other. But once you focus on getting all the micronutrients in your diet, it'll just make a whole lot of sense. You get satiety, you're lower carb anyway, your insulin drops because you lose weight, and it's your basal insulin, which is most of it. And so it's fun. Check it out. Join the tribe. Nutrition's about nutrients. Spread the rumor.
There's definitely something in there. Hey, Marty, thanks so much once again. I love talking to you.
Thanks so much.
Love your passion.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.